Good evening, everyone. I'm Archit Tashadri. Thanks so much for joining us. Today is Monday, August the 7th. Tonight on our special report, we'll focus on gender disparity in the workplace and why so many tech firms have more men than women. Why is that the case? Plus, we'll also look at the perils of the online web and the dark secrets and predators looming on the internet and how you can stay safe. Those stories and much more tonight on our special report only on WION.
Quite prevalent that the dark web deals in arms, drugs and other illicit commodities. But what has now come out is something that's pretty scary. According to the Italian police, a British model was drugged and abducted for a week in Italy last month by a British resident Pole who tried to auction her off as a sex slave on the dark web. The 20-year-old model reportedly was injected in the arm with a tranquilizer after she went to what turned out to be a fake photo shoot at a venue near Milan's Central Station on July 11th. The kidnappers allegedly stripped, photographed and bound the woman before driving her in a boot of a car from Milan to a country house in the tiny village of Borgial in the northwestern region of Piedmont. While the model has been rescued, authorities are unclear as to whether the kidnappers were actually intending to sell the victim on the dark web or if it was just a staged threat intended to extort ransom from the model's agent and family. Many details of the case still remain unclear. Investigations are continuing in collaboration with police in Britain. The model has been safely rescued, but such a case actually underlines the growing threat dark web can pose. Bureau Report, WION.
So exactly what is dark web and how is it affecting the lives of people around the world? It is certainly becoming a danger for both those online and those offline. Well, in simple terms, dark web is really nothing but an underground online market that deals in illegal commodities such as drugs, firearms and other weapons. Even better, understand it this way. You can easily Google out most of the stuff on the internet, right? But remember that websites that fall under dark web cannot actually be accessed in a usual, typical manner. Quite like you don't have access to an underground market in real life. Now, such websites can instead be accessed through special browsers. These websites survive in an encrypted network. Now, it's not easy to keep a track of these sites. Therefore, these websites also enable online criminal activities. They attract criminal syndicates and become a platform for terror organizations. This to conduct their online activities. So certainly a crazy situation after what happened recently in Europe when a model was allegedly taken away. She was kidnapped. She thought she was in fact going for a picture, a photo session, and then she was kidnapped thanks to the dark web. All right, let's get our discussion going tonight on this. We're joined by Raju Chintala, the founder of the India Business Council from Indianapolis, joining us tonight. Thank you so much for your perspective, Raju. The dark web certainly has a lot of secrets, and we've seen the perils of online. How can people stay safe? What are some basic things, no matter what age you are, to protect yourself from the dark web?
Unfortunately, everything has a other side of the coin. Everything that what we have, the technology, the people are always use the dark side, especially the website. So many websites that do sell different things that illegal or criminal activity around the world. How are we going to protect? Is it safe for everybody? Not at all. We know how much money government is spending. You can look at all the agencies. Nowadays, even the local police, local law enforcement, how much energy and how much money, how much human resources they're spending on cracking down these websites. Every day there are pops up websites, and unfortunately, around the world, the websites do pop up, but the free speech, free content that they write, and every website which you are talking, like the layers and layers and layers of the websites is going to dark web. If you look at the criminal agency which is looking into it, they say it is very difficult to find out these websites.
When it comes to this model, the specific case that we just heard about in Europe, I mean, situations like this where people easily get lured in, they think, anything online is relatively safe, or perhaps they don't think so much. I mean, this girl who was abducted and then attacked. I mean, situations like this, many people easily become victims thanks to the predators online. Are parents responsible? Should parents perhaps take more of a vested interest in protecting their children of any age to not get fooled? I mean, who's at risk here?
Everybody's at risk, whether it's a children, whether it's adult, whether it's anybody. We see a lot of websites seeking for sexual activity, people posting on it, and even like every day I hear a doctor is arrested for seeking sex with an 18-year-old,
right?
Or a attorney was arrested seeking a sexual activity with a 13-year-old girl. So these are unfortunately, I have no one-word answer. Wish we have one-word answer, say that we can stop it, or there is a technology
right.
that can stop posting anything that is not within the legal system, or anything that is a criminal activity can be avoided. I don't think the Google or Yahoo or Microsoft or any company has the technology to recognize these websites and eliminate from unable to access through these. And you look at the apps. Apps are misused now. Look, forget about these dark websites, but you look at the new apps which is coming up on iPhone. iPhone is supposed to be very secured, reliable apps.
Right.
And in spite of all that, people are using the chat, video chatting apps, or texting apps. Those are the things. Always there will be some people criminal-minded, or any other non social purpose, they will
right.
be used, and unfortunately there is no one answer.
All right, we'll come back to you just in a second. Let me go really quickly over to Vinayak Dalmia, a social activist from Delhi. The situation certainly grave with the dark web, things that people don't realize, an online black market. Really quickly, your thoughts on what are some things that people should be more careful of? The trusted internet that everybody loves, but it certainly does come at a price.
Thank you.
Absolutely, it comes at a high price, and I think children are obviously the most vulnerable, because on the dark web there is always scope for manipulation, there is always scope for abuse, and it's harder to track, and there is no transparency. So we're all aware of the infamous website Silk Road. So those kind of examples, whether it's selling illicit services, selling illicit products like drugs online, and anybody can access it, whether you're legally allowed to buy that or not. And that's why it's extremely worrying. And I think the segment of the population which is the most vulnerable to this
right.
are the younger population.
All right, we'll continue the
conversation. There's something for us to keep in mind, and there's something for the regulators to do something about.
Absolutely. We'll continue this conversation, but of course, in the essence of time, we are now going to move on to our next topic. I'm going to have both of our guests stay on. All right, it's a topic that everybody sort of wants to weigh in on. Our next big discussion tonight. Google is now the center of controversy yet again. It happened after a Google employee leaked an internal document that claimed that biological causes are the reason that there is a dearth of women in leadership roles in the tech industry. The 3,000-word document by anonymous male software engineer reads, quote, "I'm simply stating that the distribution of preferences and abilities of men and women differ in part because of biological causes, and that these differences may explain why we don't see equal representation of women in tech and leadership." The words in the leaked document have drawn a flack from critics as well as people alike. Critics are of the opinion that the sentiments in the document perhaps could reflect the culture of a company. It seems like it's hostile towards women and minorities. Google's new vice president of diversity, Danielle Brown, though, clarifying that that is not the viewpoint that Google endorses, promotes, or encourages. All right, let's go back to our discussion with our guests. Let's bring in all of them. We have Raju Chintala, the founder of the India Business Council from Indianapolis. We also have Vinayak Damia, a social activist from Delhi. We also have Pavan Dugal joining us. He is a cyber law expert. Let's bring in all of our panelists for this discussion. First, let's start with Pavan Dugal. The fact that this employee, perhaps accidentally or perhaps deliberately, we're not sure, leaked out this information about why there are not enough women in leadership positions in tech firms. Why do you think that's the case, Pavan?
Well, I think there's no legal or a policy issue that's connected with this. This is primarily a kind of opinion that's a subjective perspective of a particular person. Whether there are any biological or natural reasons behind the same, I'm not the best person to talk about it since I'm only a lawyer. I work in the legal policy issues concerning internet and technology and the law. But by and large, I believe this is an individual's perspective. I don't subscribe to this. I think women are equally as good as men. In fact, in some cases, they are far more better than men because of their intrinsic capabilities to handle stress and strain.
All right, let me go to Vinay. Let me ask you the same question with regards to Vinay Dalmia. Why is it we don't see as many women in leadership roles? I mean, this Google employee leaking this information on. Is it a society mindset? Are there just not enough women trying or perhaps applying for those positions? Why is it that tech is so male-dominated?
Thank you for having me on the show. It's appropriate that actually we're talking about something like this on the day of Rakhi in India, which is in many ways celebrating women. It's extremely unfortunate. It's 3,000 words of immature rambling by somebody who is living in an echo chamber of himself. One can only hope this is not reflective of Google as a company. It's only reflective of that individual's mindset. That being said, Silicon Valley has had an issue with gender in recent history. You know the case of Google. We know the case of Binary Capital.
Right.
We also know that other companies, and Google included, are not the best employers of women in terms of equal number of men and women. And I think this biased mindset goes beyond just what sort of people have, what people's view is. It is reflected in the pay scales. It's also reflected in promotions. It's also reflected in cases of sexual harassment. And if you look at the data and you look at the published reports, there hasn't been much change in terms of the number of women employed, whether it's in the technology companies or in the VC industry. So there is a definite sort of sexual bias in Silicon Valley, and it's a very serious problem.
Let's also quickly get a quick recap with regards to the gender disparity in the workplace, not just in leadership positions, but in general. It seems like in many companies, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, Oracle, Apple, a majority of these on average is about 30% women. It seems like the majority of the employees there are men. I mean, why is that the case in your opinion, Raju? Why do we not see more women in such fields? Is it simply because of cultural mindsets, or are these companies not really promoting a more inclusive culture?
I agree that companies are trying to encourage people to go into this. They are paying for education. They are paying for higher education. Many of them are encouraging. Look at if you go back a few years ago, maybe 2 decades ago, all hard jobs, engineering jobs, is supposed to be taken by male. Most of them, female used to go into the medicine, science, more home science, and psychology and courses. Depends on the individual priorities, how they look at their career. Like, for example, my son in the 5th grade, he decided what he wants to be when he is grown up. It depends on the woman and the man when they were in high school, what they are exposed to, how the parents are trained, given the resources and opportunities for them to educate themselves when they become what they want to be.
Right,
look
absolutely.
Look at how many women executives are in technology jobs. Look at the Facebook, look at the Google, look at any of those high pay. I mean, unfortunately, when you're comparing the 70% and 30%, yes, there are always going to be less percentage of some, either it's a gender or racial or ethnicity, or minorities, there is always going to be the percentages difference. Based on that, we cannot say they are less and they are high.
All right.
The volume of the production from the universities, when they're going to the college, when they're hiring from the campuses, men are more higher in the engineering colleges. So that what makes sense, rather than criticizing a company saying, okay, they cannot go and hire 50% of everything they see.
All right. So it's more of an academic, perhaps, issue, perhaps not at the corporate level. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we do want to take a quick moment to thank all of our guests on this topic about gender disparity, Raju Chintala, as well as Pavan Dugal and Vinayak Damia. Thank you for all of your perspectives. And that does it for this edition of WION, World is One News. Thanks so much for joining us. You can continue and catch all of our stories on our mobile, digital, and social media platforms. Thanks for joining us. I'm Archit Seshadri. Good night.